right, hey, football fans, welcome to this edition of Football Talk. This is an Inside Sports production. I'm Charles E. Smith, Jr., and we're down to the big game. We started with 12 teams. The 12 became 8. The 8 became 4. The 4 became 2. And now the 2 shall become 1. We're going to take a look at that. Of course, I'm not going to do this by myself. I do enlist one of the greatest football minds you'll find anywhere, none other than Chris Lardieri of FootballNation.com. I do urge everyone to follow him on Twitter at Chris L. Sports. So without further ado, here is the man, Mr. Lardieri. What's happening?
Charles, yet another super introduction for a Super Bowl weekend. Thank you. I appreciate it. I can't believe we're here already staring the quote-unquote big game in the face and the impending doom I'm starting to feel come Monday morning knowing there's no more football.
All right. Well, you know what? As we always start off, I got to give you your props, obviously. So what's going on there? FootballNation.com and FN Follies.
My FN Follies column tomorrow will be as a kind of a common theme I've had this year. Not your typical Super Bowl / big game / hard bowl preview where I make my usual sardonic and humorous observations about the game and what to look for. The announcers, maybe some of the commercials, maybe a reference or 10 to deer antler spray, but it'll be humorous as always, and maybe I'll have a few good observations and predictions. I will say if you do get involved in any of these Super Bowl square pools, boxes, whatever they call them at the office, don't expect to win. You'll probably be like me and touch one of the squares that wins, or be at the mercy of the infamous Ben Roethlisberger touchdown that never happened back in '05 against the Seahawks. So just do it for entertainment purposes only.
Exactly. It just makes things a little bit more interesting, but overall I think we're in for a pretty good game here. I mean, the Ravens sort of, coming out of nowhere a little bit, and then the 49ers, I mean, both of them coached by Harbaughs. And, I got to think, if I was in one of those square pools, I just have a feeling that my numbers would be like numbers 2 and 5 or something like that, that are never going to come up. I mean, where's the combination where you're going to hit 5 unless they get 5 touchdowns and get 35 points?
Yeah, or double nines, which only looks good on Wayne Gretzky's back to make a hockey reference. But and I got to throw in here a correction and retraction. I think technically that Super Bowl took place in 2006, but it was the 2005 season. But, I don't want the NFL coming after us. We've already said Super Bowl instead of big game, and now I don't want them coming after us for inaccuracy. So I disclose that now.
Okay, well, yeah, that was the Bill Levy Super Bowl, we'll just call it. The Levy Bowl. Yes. All right. Well, you know what? What's the most impressive thing? We look at the playoffs. Obviously, we're down to the final 2 teams. We've got the Ravens. We got the Niners. And ironic, in both of these championship games, the NFC and the AFC championship game, they both scored 28 points. They're both coached by Harbaughs, and both teams held their opponents scoreless in the second half of the game. The Ravens 28 to 17 over the Patriots, and then the Niners, of course, 28-24 over the Atlanta Falcons. But that was a great championship day.
Yeah, it definitely was. I'm noticing a trend here. I don't know. Some of our viewers and listeners and readers may not be aware. We should probably let them know that the Harbaughs are brothers and they're coaching against each other in the Super Bowl. I know it hasn't been mentioned too much this week, but when you got that and the 28 points in the second half shutout, I mean, pretty interesting trend, not a coincidence. But 2 great games, and at the end of the day, everyone's talking about Ray Lewis and his retirement and his last hurrah, but let's give it up for Joe Flacco. There's a lot of talk about, is this guy an elite quarterback, which seems to be the favorite topic of every playoff and Super Bowl week. Mm-hmm. And he really turned it on in the month of January. I know a lot of that had to do with the firing of Cam Cameron as offensive coordinator. Jim Caldwell's definitely unleashed Flacco throwing the ball downfield more. And for a big guy, he moves pretty well. And this kind of goes back to what we've talked about throughout the year. You don't have to be a scrambler to be good, but you look at someone like a Flacco or an Andrew Luck, they're definitely not like Dan Marino, who couldn't get out of his own way of of his own shadow. I mean, I think that's an underrated facet to Flacco's game. So he's really come on here. I think he'll probably get a much-deserved contract extension and silence the critics, win or lose. That's one thing that really stuck out to me on the Ravens side of the ball.
Well, two things. One, Flacco is looking for $20 million a year, and the other thing in regards to Dan Marino, I think anyone who could throw like that, they'd stay in the pocket all the time too.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I was a huge Marino fan,
Yeah.
but when you see these big guys now, they're not like your dad's quarterback or our quarterback. We're dads practically, so granddads soon enough, right? But Flacco wants $20 million. So do I. It doesn't mean we're going to get it, but
Yeah.
he'll get his contract, and then we won't have to hear the elite shenanigans. I mean, last year it was Eli, this year it was Flacco. It's plenty of the media latches on to everything, and then we've got on the San Francisco side of the ball, Randy Moss informed the world this week that he's the greatest wide receiver ever. So I was wondering what
Really?
you thought. Maybe we could debate that a little bit tonight, briefly.
Well, you know what? I'll say this about Randy Moss. I could give him, most gifted wide receiver ever. I may give him that. As far as physically talented wide receivers, I might give him that. But as far as best receiver, that goes, a lot of that has to do with work ethic. It has to do with attitude. It has to do with being a good teammate. It has to do with being clutch. It has to do with a lot of things that Randy Moss has not necessarily shown over the course of his career. So, that would be like, Jeff George coming out and saying that he had the best arm or he was the best quarterback ever. Well, if you go just straight by ability to throw, he's up there. I think Jeff George had one of the top 5 arms that we've ever seen in the league. But the problem was Jeff George was a head case, and it's the same thing with Randy Moss. It's not that he wasn't talented, it's what he did with that talent on the field. And I think maybe he's being a little bit remorseful now. He's realizing that he has reached the end of a career that when he was younger he thought he'd be able to play forever. Now he's looking at his legacy, and he's probably got some regrets going on there too.
Yeah, definitely. He's got no ring, so this is ultimately probably his last shot to get one.
Yep, so Randy Moss, I don't know about him being the greatest of all time. If it was, a game that I needed to have, I think I'd be willing to go with Jerry Rice or maybe Lynn Swann, John Stallworth if you're old school.
Yeah, I agree with you there wholeheartedly. People have forgotten about that Pittsburgh receiving corps, but I'm with you. I have to go with Jerry Rice. So, Randy, you're not even the best receiver in the history of the franchise.
Right. So, you know what? And let's go back to quarterbacks a little bit, because Colin Kaepernick, of course, kind of coming out of nowhere as he replaced injured Alex Smith. And now Alex Smith, from what I understand, is going to be he's asking for his release, but of course that's another story to be dealt with after the Super Bowl. But Kaepernick, we saw him run for 181 yards against the Packers and really just kind of chewed up the Packers team. But then the next week, Atlanta makes the adjustments they need to. They kind of, cut him off, limit the passing lanes, keep him in the pocket. He only gains 21 yards, but the result is they win again. They were down 17-0, and they still came back, won that game. And Kaepernick showing, whether it's with his legs or with his arm, is this a kind of a pick your poison type of thing?
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely not a one-dimensional quarterback, be with the legs or the arm. He's got a really impressive arm when I watch him. And I think you really can't key on one if you're the Baltimore Ravens. You've got to look to contain him, but you can't let him beat you throwing the ball, and you definitely can't let him beat you running. So I don't know. Do you put a shadow on him? Do you blitz the heck out of him? Do you change looks to confuse him? Hard to say, but I think that's going to be one of the most interesting matchups is Kaepernick versus this experienced Ravens defense.
Yep, and talking about the defense, obviously it's about Ray Lewis, number 52 retiring, the great career. Is he the greatest of all time? That's to be debated. What about the deer antler spray? We may not ever know. But the 52 on the other side, that's Patrick Willis leading that 49er defense, and maybe seeking a little bit of respect there, and maybe are they slightly underrated because of, being overshadowed by the Ray Lewis thing? Both number 52 and both of them great linebackers.
Yeah, Patrick Willis, excuse me, is an extremely underrated linebacker, one of the best in the league. Doesn't get his due. I think he's, let's just say, a little more low key than Mr. Lewis. But
Uh-huh.
just in general, this 49ers defense has really impressed me. You look back last year in the NFC Championship game against the Giants. I mean, I, being a Giants fan, have not seen Eli Manning get battered like that. I don't think probably since his rookie season when he was extremely green. And that was one of the great defensive battles I've seen in an NFL playoff game in a long time. I think the country as a whole on a national stage on Sunday evening will get to see this 49ers defense, just how good they really are. Not a lot of pub, but I mean, when Alex Smith was quarterbacking the 49ers and they were struggling to score points, the defense was carrying this team.
Absolutely. And then, going back and staying on the defense, but the other side of the ball, the big story has been Ray Lewis, but also, Ed Reed, who came into the league, has been great for a lot of years now, but he came in the year after the Ravens won that first Super Bowl back in 2001. But Reed getting towards the end of the career, free agency kind of coming up. They're talking about, will this be his last ride with the Ravens as well? But Ed Reed also, looking for his first ring. It seems like he's been there forever, but he does not have a Super Bowl ring yet.
Yeah, very amazing. And, he's lost a step or two, but another interesting story. Will he go out a winner with the Ravens? Will he come back for another year or two? Hard to say, but yeah, it's kind of gone unnoticed until the last few days here leading up to the Super Bowl. I think Peter King mentioned something about it on NBC Sunday night during the exhilarating Pro Bowl game that I know you thoroughly enjoyed, Charles. But one rumor he's floating out there is that if he does go, don't be surprised if Bill Belichick snaps him up to play for the Patriots for a few years, a la when he got Rodney Harrison.
Yeah, that's what I've heard about that as well. And we'll see, because Ed Reed, he's definitely a warrior, and I think, honestly, if you had to speculate, he'd be a good fit for the Patriots because they're not in a rebuilding phase. They just need to shore up a few things here and there, and they could be okay. So we'll see what happens with Ed Reed. But also Ray Rice getting the ball, carrying the load. I like that matchup too. There, Ray Rice for the Ravens, and then his equivalent really on the other side. That's Frank Gore running for the Niners. We look at these two teams, and it's the narrowest of margins, and the fact that they're coached by brothers is so ironic because really this is the same team at opposite ends of the coast, but these really are very similar football teams here.
Yeah, I'd have venture to say the Harbaughs clearly have left their stamp on both these squads. Digging in a little deeper, you look at both teams' offensive lines. The 49ers have an excellent offensive line. The Ravens, who have tinkered with their line all year and had problems, have finally gelled here in the playoffs. I know this unit had played together in the positions they're currently in until January, but they've really gelled, and they've gotten Ray Rice going, and they've gotten Flacco protection.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's ultimately where the battle's going to be won, in the trenches. One other thing that, don't ask me why this pops up in my head, but if it's a close game, I think I'd side with the kicking of Baltimore. I mean, Justin Tucker, rookie out of Texas, had a nice year. Believe me, no one's missing Billy Cundiff from Baltimore. But David Akers, just after a fantastic Pro Bowl season, has really struggled to the point where they were actually considering having Cundiff replace him for the Green Bay playoff game. So, game on the line. Do you really trust David Akers? I know it's a dome game. There's not going to be any climate issues, but that's one little subplot / storyline that you keep your eye on.
That's true. And, he missed a big kick there in the Falcons game, even though they did win that game. But, and I looked at that kick that he missed, and he hits the goalpost flush on that kick. And that's one of those things where that gets in your head because you're just trying to do something. It's like, let me just ease this kick through and everything will be okay. And it's doink, and back it comes. But they won that game. You gotta wonder about that. And I think it's going to be, down to who can pick up a few key third down situations, a few key first downs here and there. And this is one of those games that's going to be, I think, decided by really just a couple of plays, much like the Super Bowl between the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers a few years back, that was really decided on two plays. There was the interception return for touchdown, and there was Clay Matthews busting through the line and making Mendenhall fumble before he could get the ball put away. And those were the two plays that decided the game there. And we could have a similar situation in this one here.
Definitely. It's going to come down to stops and probably ultimately a key turnover or two. Whichever defense forces that, ultimately, I think is going to win the game.
All right. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and kind of get into this, picking the game a little bit here. So, you know, here we got the playoff standings as far as our picks go. I'm at 5-5. You know, I had that horrendous first week where I went 1-3, and it just killed me. I couldn't recover. Chris is at 7-3 right now. The best I can do is finish a game behind. So I got to concede right now that Chris has won the playoff picks segment here on Football Talk. I won the regular season by one game. It looks like you're going to win. You got the postseason all wrapped up, but you know what? All said and done, it's pretty close. Do you have an acceptance speech ready?
Yeah, you know what? I will. I've got one, but you know, like they say, it doesn't matter unless you win your last game. So let's save it for our wrap-up episode next week.
Okay, perfect. Well, you know, as we analyze this game, I think the way I would look at it here is it's in Baltimore, again, we talk about it. It's hard to sort of evaluate them because they really became a different team just in the last 2 or 3 weeks of the regular season. They had replaced their offensive coordinator late, and then it was a matter of everyone getting healthy. Not on the defensive side of the ball, and then you talk about the offensive line did not come together until the postseason, really. So a little bit harder to evaluate. Then you got Frisco replacing their quarterback and him coming through, and everybody wondering, is Kaepernick going to have a bad game at some point? So maybe a little bit of some ifs on both sides of the ball here. Definitely.
And you know what? By the same token and the same logic, is Flacco due for a bad game? He's really been on a roll. I mean, he's been prone to turnovers in the past. Hard to say. But ultimately, for me, I look at this 49ers team. We know the defense is stout. I just feel like they're on this roll offensively, kind of like you look at last year's Giants. You look at the year before that with the Packers, the year before that with the Saints. All these Super Bowl winning teams seem to gel at the right time offensively, specifically at the quarterback position. And, you know, whether Colin Kaepernick becomes the next Jeff Hostetler or, you know, is just beginning a great career a la Ben Roethlisberger, hard to say, but I think right now you're looking at the hot quarterback in the NFL, and there's a reason his team's in the Super Bowl.
Well, looking at Flacco, though, he's been really, you know, through the playoffs, they've had to come back. They had to come back against the Patriots. They had to come back against the Broncos. Once they shored up the special teams, though, that Broncos game, that was really what was kind of killing them. But Flacco, that's the thing where he's looking for the respect. You know, you're saying, is Flacco due for a bad game? And Flacco is busy saying that he is an elite quarterback. So if he was going to have a bad game, maybe it would have happened by now. But we don't know. But let's go ahead and, you know what, let's end this suspense and go ahead and pick the game here. So I'll give my analysis here, and then you can just chime in. But I'm going to go ahead with, you talked about the 49ers. And when I look at the two teams play, the way the Niners went through the playoffs versus the way that the Ravens went through the playoffs, there were a couple of key things, the reason why the Ravens got here. And one was when you look at the way they beat the Broncos, it was a matter of Torrey Smith matched up on Champ Bailey. And they thought Champ Bailey could handle him, but Torrey Smith got free for 2 easy touchdowns and really a third which Flacco overthrew him on. And then when they beat the Patriots, Aqib Talib gets injured in the game in the second quarter. He goes out, and Anquan Bolden goes to work after that. So I think they took advantage, and this was to Jim Caldwell's credit, of course, the new offensive coordinator, Jim Caldwell, and that is seeing a weakness in the defense and exploiting that. And I think that the problem is with the Niners, they're not going to get that kind of a break in the Super Bowl here. So that said, I think things have got to lean towards the 49ers side of the ball, because the Ravens did catch a few breaks. Granted, they had to exploit it, but they did catch a few breaks in that their big receivers were not able to be covered properly.
Definitely, and ultimately why I'm leaning Niners. Look, I think it could go either way. I would be shocked if we're conversing next week and the same bat time and the same bat channel and the Ravens have won another Super Bowl. But ultimately for me, I think the 49ers defense gets an edge, specifically at secondary, and I think their secondary is better than New England's, and I think it's better than Denver's. They both had good secondaries, those teams. Not outstanding, but I don't think anywhere the caliber of what you see San Francisco's back for. So I think, with an extra week to prepare, I think Jim Harbaugh will have his guys ready to shut down Smith and Bolden.
Okay, and well, it's going to be up to John Harbaugh to come up with something there. And also, they got Ray Rice, so maybe it's going to be about controlling the ball with Ray Rice, which they tried to do against the Patriots, but really that wasn't working. They were just controlling the ball, but they weren't really, they were chewing up time on the clock, but it wasn't really resulting in anything. That's when they went to the air, and Talib got injured right at that point, and they were able to go on the aerial attack in the second half, and really they held the Patriots scoreless and won the game. So we'll see what he can scheme up. But in any case, Jackie and Jack Harbaugh, the parents, they were there at media day, and they're going to be happy with watching their boys play. And we just got a little bit of sidebar. That must be a real thrill when you talk about it for parents. I mean, you got some kids there. To watch your two sons coaching against each other in the Super Bowl, got to be your finest moment as a parent,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the only thing I think you compare to is if the Manning brothers faced off in the Super Bowl. But when you realize how hard it is to come into the league like both Harbaugh brothers did, and to turn their teams around and have such success in such a short amount of time, I mean, that makes this all the even more impressive. And, one other thing that kind of has me leaning San Francisco is Jim's the younger brother. And, I'm the oldest in my family. I have a younger brother. But I know how much my younger brother always wanted to beat me, whether it was wiffle ball or, video games or God knows what. So I just think that little younger brother rage or inspiration or whatever, you've got to take that intangible into account, Charles, right?
Yep, absolutely. So, in other words, you're thinking that maybe Ray Lewis and T. Sizzle and Ed Reed, for all the glory and everything, they may come up a little bit short here. So shall we go ahead on the record with the picks here? Super Bowl 47 will be won by
the San Francisco 49ers.
Okay, and after careful analysis, I believe I concur. I like the 49ers as well. And not only like I talk about the defensive matchups, but when we look at the quarterbacks making plays, and yeah, Flacco, he can take a lane if you give it to him, but I think Kaepernick has shown that he can beat you a few different ways. And when we look at it, I said it's going to come down to a couple of key first downs here and there, maybe making something out of nothing. I think it's just those little things where Frisco is going to have the edge. And like I said, when all is said and done, I think this game is going to be decided on probably 2 or 3 plays. That's it. I don't look at either team getting steamrolled one way or the other. When you look back and analyze, I think next week we're going to be talking about just maybe the 2 or 3 plays that decided this whole game.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to throw a name out there of a player who I think could make a difference on the San Francisco side, and that's Vernon Davis. Mm-hmm. He's been all but invisible since Kaepernick took over the reins of the offense.
Correct.
But, looks like the last couple of weeks he's discovered the big tight end, and I just have a feeling he might sneak by those linebackers, get into the Ravens secondary, and if Kaepernick hits him, watch out. I mean, guy's had a nice career in San Francisco. And it's plays like that and guys like that who come up big. And, everyone wants to look at the names, but there could be a key play like that. I'm not saying we're going to have a David Tyree miracle football against the helmet type catch, but that's who I kind of pinpoint as a guy who you want to looking for an unsung hero type moment.
Well,
thinking Kaepernick hits him over the middle.
And let's not forget, Vernon Davis is a heck of a receiver. Really, he is. I mean, he got kind of, the plays just weren't going his way, and he wasn't seeing a lot of balls thrown to him. but Vernon Davis is a heck of a receiver. You got Vernon Davis, you got Crabtree, and then the old vet. We can talk. We got a few minutes to talk about this. Randy Moss. He's claiming he is the greatest receiver of all time. Is this correct?
In his mind, yes. In mine, no.
A legend in his own mind. And that's one thing that I think may be working against the 49ers is, and this is a little bit superstitious, but, sports are about superstitions. Do the football gods really want Randy Moss to have a Super Bowl ring? That's the only thing I think could derail the 49ers here.
It's a good point. And one other thing I was thinking about that kind of had me on the fence up until Showtime, you look at the trend lately, and guys who either announced their retirement or everyone pretty much knows they're retiring, they end up going out winners. You look at Jerome Bettis, you look at Michael Strahan. Could Ray Lewis be the next one?
Yep. And then you have the other guys like in Randy Moss, maybe, chasing that ring at the end of his career. He hasn't said this. Randy Moss, I don't believe, has announced that this is going to be his last season. But remember Junior Seau going to the Patriots, trying to chase that elusive ring late in his career. The late Junior Seau, of course, mad respect for him, but wasn't able to get it. So, yeah, there's all kinds of stories and subplots, plenty to go around. And we talk about that every week. This guy is going to be retiring. Is it this guy's last year? The story behind this person who went there and all that. And you look at it, and there's stories on every single team about a lot of different players. So it just comes down to, getting it done on that gridiron.
Yeah, definitely. And, at this point, enough with the talk, and let's just watch these guys play.
Okay, so for the record, everybody, Charles E. Smith Jr. and Chris Lardieri are both picking the San Francisco 49ers to be crowned champions. That'll be the 5th Super Bowl in the Niners' history, correct? I'm counting right, 5? And Pittsburgh's still on top with 6.
Oh, it will be. If they win,
this will be 6. That's correct. Yeah. That'll tie them. They'll be 6-0.
Yep, and I saw an interesting little meme on Facebook this week. I guess there's some sort of, I don't know if it's a banner or sign or whatever that says something to the effect of like quest for 6 or goal for 6 trophies, and someone took that and put the Raiders logo next to it and said quest for 6, and then they wrote in a little red ink wins. So I mean that's the night and day between the Bay Area football team.
There we go. So we're just about out of time here. So Chris, final thoughts here.
A continuing trend this season when we talk every week, Charles, as I tell you, I predict with my head and not my heart. And I went to Rutgers, and I would love nothing more than for one of my favorite fellow Scarlet Knight football players, Ray Rice, to get a ring. But I'm sticking with the 49ers, going with my gut, my intuition. And if that does happen, we've got Anthony Davis, a fine tackle out of Rutgers. So technically, someone from Rutgers will win a ring on Sunday night.
Okay, well, at least you have your priorities straight there.
That's right. I'm hedging my bets, my proverbial bets, that is.
All right, everybody. So thanks for joining us. For Chris Lardieri, I'm Charles E. Smith Jr. This has been Football Talk. We will see you next week. We'll be breaking down the Super Bowl and what happened, what didn't happen, the woulda, the coulda, and the shoulda. But, hey, make sure you come in, and thanks for joining us this week. We'll see you next week right here inside Sports. This has been Football Talk.